Izuku Shigaraki by Fangirl48 on AO3. Chapter 9. Bound by Strings. Izuku wandered aimlessly, unable to hear or see anything amidst the endless void that surrounded him. All he could do was continue forward and hope to find something, or perhaps someone, that could help him. Drip, drip. Stopping suddenly at the noise, Izuku listened very carefully, trying to locate the distant sound source. Standing very still and holding his breath, Izuku concentrated. Drip, drip. Heading to what he believed was the source of the sound, all Izuku could do was hope that his mind wasn't playing tricks on him. Unaware how long he had been running, Izuku suddenly stopped and stared ahead at what appeared to be a sea of fragment-looking strings. Moving closer to the strings, something deep inside Izuku told him not to break any of them. So very carefully, he weaved his way through them, noticing that some of the strings appeared to be woven together. Unbeknownst to Izuku was the flowers that sprung from the ground from his footsteps as he examined the strings more closely. Each string was unique in size and color. Some even had patterns on them that were hard to see. Some were alone, while others were woven together with other strings, and their colors bled together wherever they touched, creating new shades of color. Tsuku. Izuku stopped, examining at one particular complex-looking braid, and looked around. He knew that voice. Izu. Moving as carefully as possible, Izuku let himself be drawn to one particular string, near the heart of them all. It was a long-looking black string that seemed to glitter with a soft pink light. Izuku looked at it, and saw the source of the noise he heard was coming off a string. It was as though the string was crying. Inko's string was crying. But why? Izuku wasn't sure how he knew, but he was sure the string was Inko's power to attract small objects. That means that all those other strings were people's powers Izuku had taken or given when he worked with his siblings running the underground. But if Izuku had Inko's power, that would mean bang. Death to all your friends. Izuku covered his ears, trying to block out the sounds of something about that voice terrified him. We'll be friends forever, right, Izuku? Izuku felt like he was going to throw up when two hands took a hold of his shoulders, and everything melted away. Izuku! Inko's soft voice came. Trying to turn around, Izuku was held firmly in place by his beloved sister-in-law's firm grip. Please don't look at me. Inko, he said, tears coming to his face as her voice. He hadn't realized how much he missed her, missed everyone until just this second. I'm sorry, Izuku. I'm so sorry. Inko spoke, her head coming to rest softly on Izuku's shoulders, dark strands appearing in the corner of Izuku's eyes. You have to find Hisashi. Please, Izuku. You have to keep your promise. Not caring about what she said before, Izuku turned around and the boy's voice caught in his throat and quickly morphed into a loud scream of terror. Inko stood in front of him, her once beautiful white dress stained bright red from her blood that flowered from the large hole in her chest. Aizawa sat there quietly, watching, when the principal's mysterious guest, who he later learned was named Izuku, had started twitching. The underground hero had been tempted to get Recovery Girl. Still, he knew that that woman would no doubt chase him out of the room. Not to mention how All Might would react. The #1 hero had practically slept next to the boy's bed for the past couple of days. Even the old man, Gran Torino, would come without fail numerous times during the day to check up on Izuku. Nezu told them that Izuku was related to the most powerful criminal that had a history with the two men, but failed to mention a name or alias. And from what All Might had told them later, Izuku helped his brother in his work. Aizawa had been suspicious at that. How could someone not realize they were working for a villain? Plus, that boy had nearly killed Midnight. There was no way he was going to take any chances before Shota first got a read on Izuku himself. With a gasp, Izuku's eyes snapped open, and he sat up, breathing hard, face pale, looking like he was about to be sick. With practiced ease, Aizawa picked up the trash bin next to the bed and held it out to Izuku, who flinched at the sight of his audience, but still accepted it with a quiet thank you. You want some water, kid? The underground hero asked, pouring some into a glass. Yes, please, Izuku said, holding a shaky hand and accepting the water, taking small sips as he studied the exhausted man in the chair. You're in the infirmary, Aizawa stated, already knowing what the boy was going to ask. Private room since you broke one of our windows in the main room. Izuku flushed in embarrassment. Oh, sorry. Crossing his arms over his chest, Aizawa stared at Izuku. Don't apologize to me. It's for Gabriel girl you should be saying sorry to. Right, Izuku stuttered, looking uncomfortable as he fiddled with the cup lid before looking up at Aizawa. Who are you? I'm Shota Aizawa. I teach one of the hero classes here at UA. Shota explained, noticing that a strange look came to Izuku's face. He pulled out his license and passed it to Izuku, watching as the curly-haired boy examined it with open curiosity. As you could see, I'm a certified hero, though I do mostly underground stuff. UA, is that what this place is called? Izuku said, looking trade-ly at the gold letters on the black protective sheet. A few minutes passed as Aizawa stared at the kid like he had grown a second head. Had he really never heard of UA before? Kid, he said, leaning forward with a stern look. Do you understand what's happening right now? Izuku looked startled at the question. Oh, well, I know that Toshinori brought me here. The detective from last night wanted me examined by some doctor? Izuku said, unaware that he'd been sleeping for so long. And I got upset because Grant said, My brother. Tears suddenly formed in Izuku's eyes and quickly fell into the blankets. The boy remembered that Hisashi had become a villain, that Tomura was dead, and Inko. Bright red blood fluttered freely from between Izuku's fingers as he pressed down as hard as he could. Feeling sick again, Izuku grabbed the waistband and started throwing up what little he had in his stomach. Aizawa observed, trying to determine whether this was an act, but couldn't find any signs of betrayal. Lifting his hands, the teacher patted one on Izuku's back, rubbing it in the same soothing way he did when Hisashi had hung over. When Izuku was done, Shota removed the waistband, replacing it with another cup of water. Is there anyone we could call? Aizawa asked, while Izuku took a sip of water. Maybe your parents? Izuku gave a short bark of laughter and looked at Aizawa with dead green eyes. Familiar eyes. My parents have been dead a long time. It was just my brothers and me. Aizawa frowned. If you don't mind me asking, the underground wondered if perhaps there was some extended family for this boy to stay with instead. What happened to them? Izuku put the cup back on the table next to the bed. Mother died having me. I'm sorry for your loss. It's fine, Izuku dismissed, drawing his knees up and resting his head on them. Hisashi said she wasn't a nice person, more interested in partying and flaunting our wealth than in her children. She hates my brothers, and she would have aborted me if someone hadn't leaked her pregnancy to the press. Aizawa frowned deeply. What about your father? Father was... Izuku trailed off, curling tighter into himself. He remembered very few things about his biological father, and none of them were good. Just the man's cold eyes and cruel words whenever he punished one of them. He was mean. I don't want to talk about him. All right, then. Aizawa said, knowing pushing would only cause Izuku to retreat further into himself. How old were you all when he died? How old were you all when he died? There must be someone we could call for you. Izuku shook his head. My parents were only children, and I never knew my grandparents. That's why the courts let Hisashi take care of us. How old is he? Izuku didn't say anything. He just looked at Aizawa suspiciously. Hisashi was 18. Tomura was 16, and I was 5. That's a big age gap. I take it then that your brothers raised you by themselves? The underground hero nodded, now understanding a little more. Acting as a backup on a few cases with child services. Shota had seen more than his few elder siblings getting custody of their little brothers and sisters. The foster system didn't have the best redemptions, so kids either had to grow up fast or be separated. Izuku hummed in agreement, his face completely blank. Shota suddenly knew where he had seen that face before. It stared back at him from the mirror a lot when he was a student, when Shomura died. It was like he and Hisashi had lost a piece of themselves, but they couldn't talk to each other or Nomura whenever things got too hard. Who could Izuku talk to? The boy was all alone as far as Shota could see, although there was clearly something between the boy and All Might, and after eavesdropping, Aizawa knew there was considerable debate over who would take custody of the child. Shota was a certified foster parent, even though he had never put it in use. If nobody stepped up soon, perhaps he could offer to take Izuku in. Of course, he would have to talk things over with Hisashi first, and make sure that Izuku didn't have a problem with cats before anything else. You should get some more sleep, kid, Aizawa said, noticing that the boy's eyes kept drooling. Izuku looked at the dark-haired man, for some reason. Aizawa reminded him of Hisashi, with his attitude and his solvent appearance. The eldest Shigaraki was secretly a hardcore workaholic, and if no one reminded him to eat, sleep, or shower, Hisashi simply forgot. Laying down, Izuku felt his eyelids grow heavy as he felt the covers being pulled over his shoulders. Hisashi would do the same thing whenever he caught Izuku studying too late in the library. Waiting for a moment, Aizawa stood up and was planning to clean up when a hand shot out, grabbing him. Following it towards the bed, he saw Izuku half sitting up, looking at him with terrified eyes. I'm sorry, the boy stammered, immediately withdrawing his hand like it burned. Aizawa looked blankly at him for a few seconds, waiting. Izuku made a small distressed noise, grabbing the blankets and laying down completely, covering himself with them. Shota stood watching as the blankets trembled and made quick work of the waste bin and discarded cups. Once he was down, he sat back in the chair and opened his bag, pulling out one of Vlad's student tests and a red pen to start grading. Eventually the trembling stopped as Izuku fell back asleep, lured there by a familiar sound of pen on paper. The opening sequence? Oh my god. So, obviously, you were already in suspense because, oh my god, Izuku passed out, there was this whole explosion, he felt like it was very emotional, right? And to take it from that big emotion down to this kind of mellow emotion to right back up, that is great. That is great. That is amazing. Some people think it's annoying. I personally love it. It's that whole, build. Where did it go? Oh, it's dropping a bit. Okay, and then boom, right? It is amazing. It is wonderful. It makes you feel as, okay, the worst has happened. It can't get any worse. And then it gets worse, right? It's why I love the tag, it gets worse before it gets better. Of course, that becomes redundant sometimes, and sometimes I'm sitting there and just please, stop. If the pacing is really off, but if the pacing is good, then I love it. The dream sequence, which I am assuming is a dream sequence, the strings representing quirks, and how each string is different and individualized, that is amazing. And we get a little more on what happened, I'm presuming is the day Izuku went into that whole frozen state, which, okay, I already assumed Inko and her child died. That was an already, okay, that most definitely happened. What I never assumed was that the banging that we keep seeing isn't a bang from a gun, but a bang from, like, something else. Like, when I first saw the bang and then the whole, you know, monologue, not monologue, but like dialogue, I was like, oh my god, wait, hold up. And I have a theory. First ever theory. What if it's Bakugo? Okay, I know this is obscured, but the author's already playing around with characters' timeline. So what if that was Bakugo? Or I don't know. It's a thought. I saw the bang. I saw the whole I thought we were friends Izuku. Whatever it is, clearly this is a memory that Izuku is suppressing. And it's for probably a good reason. It's probably really traumatic, and by what that person, this mysterious individual with either a quirk or a gun, saying what they're saying, the whole I thought we were friends Izuku, it's giving the whole implication that, yeah, no, Izuku probably is going to blame himself for the death of Inko and the death of his little nephew, right? Which makes sense. It really does make sense, because, you know, that's how mind works. It's survivor's guilt, right? He survived that incident and they don't, and he's gonna have that survivor's guilt, unfortunately. And it's just, it's upsetting, and we're most likely going to find out what happens, but I know the second we find out what happens, it's going to be a train wreck for Izuku. Because, you know, repressed memories, sometimes you don't get them back. They stay, it is very loud in my household, but I'm not re-recording this, we're 3 minutes in. It stays repressed because your mind knows that you can't handle it. It represses it. It's why sometimes when people are, essayed or R-word, they can't remember it. Or when, like, really big traumatic events happen, like a car crash or something big and traumatic, you either remember it vividly or it's faded and fogged, right? And that's for a reason. Your mind can't handle traumatic events, but if your mind could handle it, it kind of imprints on you. Traumatic events are imprinted in one's mind and kind of hard to un-imprint. So yeah, I'm very interested where the author is going to take that, because I'm super interested in that. That is super interesting. It is super intriguing, you know? Izuku and Aizawa. Are we going to get that Zawa? Hold up. I got to look at the tags, because part of me thinks we're going to get Aizawa. Because of the way Aizawa's like, if nobody takes him in, I'm taking him in, and the whole setting up with the whole he has the license and stuff. Okay, so it's not tagged as Dad Zawa. There is no Dad Zawa tag, and this person doesn't have relationship tags, which normally it's where I look at to see, like, what are the platonic or romantic relationships. So for now, we're in the not knowing, but it could very well be that Aizawa takes him in. And if Aizawa does take him in, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be a giggly fanboy. Because, sue me, I love the whole Aizawa being Izuku's dad trope a little too much. And Present Mike confirmed. So, Present Mike, Aizawa, together, confirmed. So it would be an eraser Mike adopting Izuku if that is what happens. Or at least fostering him, you know? Whatever it is, I do know that we're at least going to see more of these two interacting. Now, the reason why I think the whole setting up for Aizawa being like adopting or fostering Izuku is because Izuku's already drawing parallels. Something that I forgot to mention is Izuku drawing Toshinori, whatever, All Might as like his brother Toshinori, there you go, or whatever, like his brother One for All. It's that whole correlation of he's in this new environment. He's in this completely just new environment. Not the same time zones, not time zones, but same time era. Everybody he knows is dead, and his brother is apparently a villain. His brother, the one thing that stayed the same, which is his brother, turns out to not be the same because his brother is dead. One of his brothers is dead, and then the other brother is a villain, you know? And, so Izuku is doing whatever he can to latch on to familiarity. And that's the thing about the human brain. We tend to latch to things that we're familiar with. We don't like new things. The brain kind of doesn't like new things, especially when it's thrown at us like this. So when someone is thrown out like that, it's why people cling on to certain colors or certain things. Familiarity is a way for the brain to cope. And here, Izuku is coping through forming a bond with All Might because you're like my brother. Or like literally have my brother in you. That sounds so wrong. And with Aizawa, he's coring the correlation with his eldest brother. And that's why I think it's gonna do that, because Izuku is already forming a bond. It might not be big or whatever, but Izuku's going through a lot of changes, a lot of emotional baggage, and is just emotionally tired. And of course his brain, right, he's 14, his brain is going to latch on to anything that's familiar, anything that is even remotely comforting, anything, right? On a less darker note, or less psychological note, Hisashi and Hisashi, both spelled the exact same except for one letter. I swear to God, I'm pronouncing one of these names right, because wrong. Present Mike's name, I know for a fact, is Hisashi. Hisashi, right? And then we have Hisashi. Hisashi and Hisashi. They sound so similar except the Z and the S, which sounds so similar when I spelled it out together, because when I have a lisp and when I'm talking really fast, sometimes I mix the two. So instead of saying Hisashi, I say Hisashi. It's such a small, subtle difference, so please bear with me. I have a lisp, I speak really fast, and these two names are going to be the death of me in this fanfic. So yeah, thank you, bear with me, and I'll see you next time. So as always, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds, have a wonderful day or night. Join our community Discord server, link is in the description, subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.